to it. Ezra Hashem, today's daf is Masechta Bava Metzia, new parak, daf Ayin Vav. So we're going to start from daf Ayin Hey Amud Beis by the Mishnah, the opening Mishnah. So the Mishnah says, Hasoicher es hu'umanim, someone who hires workers. Now, you hire a worker, there's two ways you can hire a worker. Either you hire him as a contractor, right? You hire him for the job, or you hire him for a daily labor. You pay him a wage. And the Mishnah says, "V'hitu zeh." They fooled each other. We don't know what that means. They fooled each other, but it sounds like they backed out of an initial agreement. That's what it sounds like. So the Mishnah, you would think, oh, you hired somebody and now you back out of it. You know, that's the typical complaint of a contractor and the person who hired them. The Mishnah says, "Ein lehem zeh al zeh al ta'ar oimis." There's no. You can't take them to court to sue. It's just you can go on to the internet and put out a 1-star rating on the guy, or he can put out 1-star rating on you who hired him. But there's only complaints. There's no financial obligation involved over here, and you can't go to court. So the Mishnah is a little cryptic, and we'll see right away what the Mishnah is talking about in the Gemara. So for the Mishnah continues, Socher as hachamor. You hired a donkey driver, a kadar, or a wagon driver, lahavi pir foreign, to carry, to transport fine wood. What are you doing with the fine wood? You're trying to make a chuppah for your son. V'chalilem lekala, or flutes for the kala. Oy lames, right? Or for a dead. So you need it to be done at a certain period of time. You have the wedding in a week's time, so he can't push it off. He can't say, "Oh, I'll do it, but I'm going to do it in a month." So, and he backs out. The worker, the donkey driver or the wagon driver backs out. Or you hired you hired workers to remove your flax from being soaked in a certain liquid. So if they don't take out the flax gets ruined. And the chol davar of it, anything that will be lost if it's not done right away. The chazru behen, and then what happens? The workers backed out. So mokim she'ein sham adam, if there is no other people that will be hired for the same price. So let's say the middle of the job they back out. So and you can't hire somebody unless you pay, a very high price. To hire somebody to finish off the job. Who's responsible for that? So the Mishnah says, Soicher alehen. You can hire extra workers, other workers, even though you're paying the last minute rate for these workers, and it's going to cost you more to finish the job. Nevertheless, you hire them, and the original workers have to pay the tab because they caused you this loss. Or, says the Mishnah, you can do something else. Matan, you could fool them. They went on strike and they said they're not working. So you can say, "Oh, I'm going to give you the very, very high price and handsomely pay you, and please continue the job." And they continue the job. So then you can say, "Nope, I'm not paying you what I committed. I'm only paying you what we originally made up." So you can fool them. Then the Mishnah says, "You hire workers, v'chazru behem, and they backed out." Yodam al hatachtoina. They have the lower hand, which means like this. If now it'll cost you more to finish the job. Let's say you priced in, let's say, eight shekels to finish this job, right? You priced in that it'll cost you 8 shekels to finish the job. And what happened was they backed out after doing half the job. Now you want to hire, so really technically you owe them 4 shekel. But then if you want to hire somebody to finish the job, it'll cost you 6 shekel. But since they backed out, you can deduct from their wages that you owe them, pay them only 2 shekels, and pay 6 shekel for the people who are going to complete the job. And what happens? It could go the other way. Let's say the price of workers go down, and let's say it will only cost you 2 shekel to complete half the jobs. So then you can pay them You can pay them 4 shekel that you owe them, pay 2 shekel to complete half the job, and the whole job cost you 6 shekel instead of costing you 8 shekel. You don't have to give it to the original workers. So basically, whoever backs out, Yodam al hatachtoina, they have the lower hand. We go to Amid Aleph. I involve on Ma'af. Im Balabai is Choizabai. Let's say the owner, the guy who made the agreement, he backs out, fires his workers. The same holds true from him. Yodai ala techtoina, that means he has the lower hand, and he has to give to them what they agreed upon. And if the price of the workers went down, then he has to give them whatever he agreed on, and plus he has to even make it up for them. So this is besides for other things. So basically, we're going to see all this in the Gemara, but basically the Balabayas has regrets. He loses his hand is on the bottom. Then the Mishnah says, Kol hamashana yodei ala tachtoina. Same idea. That if you give to a dyer wool to dye red and he dyes it black, so then there are 2 parts to it. What could happen when he dyes it is he invests money into the wool and for the dye and stuff, and now the wool is more valuable. So then what do you do? You wanted it a certain color, now he changed it and now it's another color. So you don't have to pay him the full price. What you pay, the less of the 2. If the expenses are less than the appreciation of the wool of the finished product, just pay just for the expenses, and you don't have to pay him the profit of it. And if the opposite is true, the expenses were more than the appreciation, then you just pray for the appreciation. This is what we learned in Masechta Baba Kama. The Chol HaChayze, the Mishnah repeats it, even not in a hiring situation, but it has to do with a sales transaction, a buyer and a seller. Whoever reneges on the deal, Yodei ala tachtoina, he has the lower hand. That means it's disadvantage that person. So now the Mishnah was cryptic enough. Let's explain the Mishnah. Mishnah said in the beginning of the Mishnah, what did the Mishnah say? That you hired workers and they fooled each other. Then there's no financial problem over here. It's just you can put out a negative review on the internet. What's the Mishnah talking about over here? It's not that the owner backed out or the worker backed out. The word hitu means you fooled them, you misled them. That the workers fooled each other. How's that? And so what's going on over here? Let's try to examine. Hey Chadami, what would be the case of the Mishnah? The Amalei Balabayas. The Balabayas said to a foreman, let's say he said to one guy, Zil oigerli payalim, go to where the migrants hang out and hire me some workers, daily workers. Va'azal ihu, and he went, va'atinu, and he fooled the workers. What does that mean? What did the foreman do? Hey Chidami, what is the case? The Balabayas will say he's going to pay 4 zuz for the day. And the foreman told the guys, and he told the migrants, Amalihi Taloisa, he's paying you only 3 zuz a day. So then what's the problem over here? They agreed to work for 3 zuz a day. Taraimis Mayavidite, what kind of complaints do they have against the owner? Sover, they thought that it's for 3 zuz that being hired, the Kabul, they accepted it. So what's the problem over there? And now the bright Gemara continues. Either Amalei Balabayas Betlasa, or you're going to say that the owner said, I'm going to hire you for 3 zuz. Okay. Va'azal ihu, and the foreman came to them and said, Amaluhu, he said, Ba'arba, you're going to hire me for 4. The foreman said he's paying 4 zuz. So, but the Balabaya said he's only paying 3 zuz. So Gemara says, hey Chidami, what's the case? If the foreman said, whatever the Balabaya is not going to pay you, I'm going to make sure that you get paid. So Nasif Le'imididei, then the foreman has to come up with the extra money. The Balabais will pay 3 zuz, and the extra zuz will the foreman, because he fooled them. The Tanya we learned in a Braisa, sometimes when you fool somebody, you got to pay extra. You have to pay for the mishap. If you hired a worker, bishaloi, and you convince the worker that you're working on your own field. And then when the worker came up to show up to work, you showed him work on my friend's field. So you pay him his full wages. And then you can collect from the owner of that field, which is your friend's field, what he benefited from. But he doesn't have to pay the full wages because he never spoke to the workers. It was you who did, and you fooled the workers, and you told them they're getting a full wage. So therefore, you have to keep your word. So if the foreman said you're getting 4 zuz, although the balabais said you're getting only 3 zuz, so the balabais will pay 3 zuz to these workers. The foreman will pay the extra zuz. He has to come up with that zuz. So what kind of complaints will the payalim have? They're getting paid. Answers the Gemara, like tzricha, the amalahu scharchem al balabayis. The foreman said, "Oh, the balabayis is paying 4 zuz, not me." So the Gemara says like this. So therefore, the balabayis could say, "I never hired you for 3. That foreman fooled you and said I'm paying 4, but really I'm paying 3." So then you can't take the balabayis to court. So the Gemara says, why can't you take the balabais to court? But let's see what is the average salary for a payalim. If it's 4 zuz, then balabais should come up with the 4 zuz because that's the normal payment for a worker. And says the Gemara, like tzricha, our Mishnah is discussing the ika the mega ba'abal, the ika the mitaga betlasa. Sometimes you hire a worker for 4 zuz, and sometimes you hire a worker for 3 zuz. Now they thought they're getting 4 zuz. And if they get 3 zuz, they're not being ripped off because some people do get 3 zuz. But the amalu, this is their complaint. The complaint is to the foreman and maybe to the balabayas, misunderstanding. Ilav the amrit lam ba'abar, had he not told us we are getting 4 zuz, tarchinu matagrinim ba'arba, we would have held out to find somebody who actually is going to pay 4 zuz. And so we're thinking we're getting 4 zuz, and really we were fooled into this whole setup by this foreman. Okay, so they can't force the balabayas to pay the zuz, but they can have, put out a negative review on him. They can have a complaint against him. If you want, I could tell you the pshat in the Mishnah. Here we're talking about the workers actually own fields of their own. So they never want to work for 3 zuz because they have their own fields. The amalahu, they tell the other balabais that they actually worked on his field. Ilav the amr lamba arba. If we weren't sure that we were getting 4 zuz, we wouldn't even wanted to take on any job because we're landowners ourselves. It's really shameful for us to even hire ourselves out for work. So that takes care of that terrace. If you want, I can tell you what's their complaint. Really, we're talking about the workers got fooled we're talking about workers who got fooled by the foreman, and they have a complaint against the balabayas. What's the complaint? The complaint is that, yes, there are some workers that get 3 zuz, but because we're thinking we're getting 4 zuz, we worked extra hard. And therefore, you should really pay us 4 zuz because look what a job we did. The Amrlay, Kavid the Amrlay about since we had the understanding we're getting 4 zuz, we worked very hard to do a fine work for you. And therefore, if you look at the quality of the work that we put in, it's really worth 4 zuz. Says the Gemara, let's see, is it true what they're saying? Answers the Gemara, berifka. They worked in a ditch around the field, and you can't really see if they did quality work. Wait a second. If they just built the ditch, Nami made the yada, we can see what's the quality of the work of the ditch that they did. It was a sloppy job. Answers the Gemara, you can't really see. The Mali Maya got filled up already with water. Below Yadiyah, we don't know if they did a quality work. So they claimed they did quality work. The Balabaya said, you were hired. I only had intention to pay 3 zuz. They said we were under the understanding from the foreman that we're getting hired for 4 zuz. There's no court case over here because there's no real, solid agreement, but they can have some complaints against the balabas. If you want, I can tell you. Here we're talking about the balabais said he's paying 4, right? And he's actually paying 4. And the foreman said, "Oh, you're being hired for 3." So then, your question is Sava V'Kibel, but they accepted it. They're willing to work for 3 zuz. But when they find out that the Balabayas really wanted to pay 4 zuz, they have a complaint against the foreman, against the Balabayas, because this information is very valuable for them. Don't you hold that? Don't hold any good back from from somebody who it belongs to. In other words, they have complaints against the foreman for trying to take advantage and lower their rates when the balabas was already paid 4. So in the end, they get paid 3, but they can still have tinus that the balabas really wanted to pay 4. He should really pay 4, but you can't, take the balabas to court on that. Now the Gemara continues with a new story. Pshita. But the Gemara is going to get back to this discussion about the Mishnah in a second, but the Gemara just wants to analyze the situation over here. Pshita, it's very simple. If the owner said, "I'm paying you 3," and the foreman said, "I'm paying you're getting 4," and they said, we're doing whatever the balabayas said. So really, that really, even though we're getting, they said we'll do whatever the balabayas wants. What they really meant to say is that we want the 4 zuz. You represented the balabas as 4 zuz, and we're saying we're only being hired like the balabayas because our understanding is that the balabayas wants to pay 4 zuz. So therefore, if they specifically said exactly what the balabayas said, so therefore, then if it depends. If the foreman said, "I'm guaranteeing it," then the foreman has to pay for it. And if he said, "Oh, the balabayas is going to take care of you," then they could have complaints against the balabayas. Ella, but what happens in this case? The balabayas said abba, and and he said 3. Va'amru, and the worker said, we'll do what the balabayas said. Oh, but the worker said the balabayas said 3. What are they thinking? Are they relying on the real balabayas? I'm sorry, are they relying on the foreman? And the foreman said 3. The Amalei, they say, Mehemet lon dehachi amar balabayas. We believe you. The balabayas wants to hire us for 3. We were doing what the balabayas wants, and we agreed to the number 3. Or maybe when they said balabayas, we want to do what the balabayas wants. Balabayas kasamche. Their really intention was what the balabayas said. And the balabayas wanted 4. It was only the foreman who said 3. And when they said, "Oh, we'll do exactly what the balabayas wants us," was intention to pay us, they meant exactly what the balabayas said, and therefore they get 4. So the Gemara says, "Tashma, come in here." A woman says to a man, a shliach, "Haveli giti, go to my husband and ask him to make you a shliach lahilacha, a shliach to bring me my get." So the guy goes and he comes to the balabayas, to the man, to the husband, and he says, "Oh, v'ishtecha amra, your wife said hiskabeli giti, that I am a shliach to accept her get. I represent her." Who Aimer, and the husband says, "Hey, lach kumay shamra. Okay, this is what she wants. Here's the get. What's the din with this get?" Amarav, Amarav. Rava said, "Afili higia get liyada in magrashes. Even the get comes into her hand, she's not mugarashes, because he was never a shliach kabbalah, because the wife never made her a shliach to accept the get, and he never made her a shliach lahilacha, because he said, "Do it exactly what my wife wanted you to be. That's what you are." So wait a second. Shamit Minei, from here we see he relied that dibur dedeka samach, that we're relying on the shliach's words, not on what the wife said. If when the husband said, "I'm going to do what my wife wanted you to be," so his wife wanted him to be a shliach lahilacha. So he should become a shliach lahilacha. When she gets the get in her hands, be it tigar, she should get get. And Rav Nachman said she's never going to get with such a get. It doesn't work. So it must be So it must be a diburi today that he's totally relying on the shliach, not on what the woman did say. So same thing over here. If the balabai said 4 and the worker said 3, the foreman said 3, so they're relying on the foreman, not really what the worker said, and therefore they should only get 3. So that's what they want to prove from this Tashma. Amar Ravashi said, we go to Amid Beis, Hachi Hashta, that you can't really make that inference from our Gemara. Bishlama, really, itma ipcha, if the Brisa would say just the opposite. That means, then I can make some sort of conclusion from your question. If a Brisa would say the case should be like this, the woman said to the shliach, "Iskabeli giti, I want you to become a shliach like Kabbalah." The ishtacha amra, and he comes to the husband and says, "Yo, your wife said havali giti, I should become a shliach lahaylacha." I'm a like heilach k'mayshama, and he says, "You're like whatever she says." And on this, Rav Nachman said, "Amar Rabba Amar Rav Nachman." If Rav Nachman would have said, "Mishigi get liyadei mugureshes," then when the get comes to her hand, she's mugureshes. Alma, so we see, when the husband said, I want you to be whatever my wife wants you to be, so he's relying on what she said, and she said that you're a shliach lekabbalah, therefore, we're going to follow that as soon as the get reaches the shliach's hands, she's already mugreshes. Inami, if Rab Nachman would have said, Mishagiya get liyodei mugreshes, when the get reaches her hand, she's mugreshes, then we say, Alma, we say, Da'adburi didei kasamach. He's relying on his words. And he said, your wife said, I'm a shliach lahilacha. Okay, so when you finally give her the get, that's when the get happens. So then you can make inferences on who the husband is relying on. Is he relying on what the shliach says he is, or what the wife really wanted him to be? Elahasam, by the other case, if you take a look at the other case, she said, I want you to be a shliach lahaylacha. And he came to the husband and said, I'm a shliach lakabbalah. And therefore, Rav Nachman said it's not a get at all. The reason is because he's not relying on anything. There is no shliach over here. Mishum da'aka shlichas gamrei. He's not even a shliach at all. Why? The Amalei, he said, shliach lakabbalah hagan. I want to be a shliach to accept the get. That's what he told the husband. But the wife never made him a shliach lakabbalah, so he's not a shliach lakabbalah. And he lahilacha lahavina, he didn't make him a shliach to bring the get. So therefore, he's not there. He doesn't want to be a shliach lahilacha either. So it's like he's saying, I only want to be a shliach lakabbalah and not a shliach lahilacha, and therefore he's not a shliach at all. And therefore, you can't bring any inference to the question that we asked. Just to finish up, we'll stop in a minute. If you want, I can tell you like this. And this is going back to what the Mishnah is discussing over here. If you want, I could tell you Haitana Chazru Nami hit to correlate. The beginning of the Mishnah, which says that they fooled each other, it means that they backed out from each other. The balabayas backed out of the workers backed out of the balabayas. And hittu doesn't mean fool, that you have to have a foreman here who's representing the balabayas. It gets a little complicated. It's the balabayas talking directly to the workers, and one of them backed out from each other. Either the balabayas backed out or the workers backed out. Tanya, we learned to the Brisa, if you hire workers, we hit this a balabayas, and they walked out of the balabayas. Or balabayas hit to Aisana, balabayas messed with them and fired them. They can't complain. There's no complaints over here. So now the Gemara says you can walk out of an agreement that you made, and the balabayas can fire you just like that, and with no financial repercussions. Yes. When was this said? You didn't start the job yet. But if you started the job and you didn't find any work to do, the workers were going to work a field, like plow a field or shovel a field, and it's unworkable, the field. So they were misled to be hired. So the owner has to give them the full wages because the workers already showed up for the job. But you don't have to pay them because they're not going to end up working anyway, because you don't have the merchandise to transport, and the field is not ready to be worked on. So you pay them a discount. You can't compare somebody who works, who's loads his truck to somebody who doesn't have to load his truck. Somebody who's working a field to somebody who's sitting idly. In other words, you're going to pay these workers for showing up, but you're not going to pay them the full amount. So now the Gemara continues. So, but the Brisa continues. When did we say this? If not only did they show up to work, but they actually started to do the work. Then if they break apart the agreement, then you have to estimate what they did. Ketzad, you pay them. They accepted to work for 2 slime. Katzer chetzia, they cut half. V'niche chetzia, and they left half. So they worked 1 sela. So they actually, the whole job was 2 slime. They only did half this job. We estimate what they did. So what they did right now, if I had to hire new workers to do what they just did, so if it was worth 6 dinars, that means the price of workers went up. You just give them 4 dinars. Or you give them the choice to finish their job. They can take 2 slime, but you're never going to pay them 6 sela. But if it costs a sela to complete the job, then you give them a sela. So what they did, you always look at what they did. How much, if I had to hire workers to do what they did, you give them because they're backing out, they have the lower hand. So you pay basically for dinner. No, you look at what they left to be done. You have to look at what's left to be done. If what left to be done to complete the job, shekel, then you give them a shekel because they're causing the balabas a loss, because now to complete the job, he's going to have to pay 6 dinarim. So, and the whole job, he estimated 4 dinarim. So he deducts 2 dinarim of what they did for half the job. He pays them 2 and uses the balance of 6 to pay the new workers. Or Yigmur Blachman, tell him to fix complete the job. But something that would not be lost. If something is lost, if it means they stop the job now, then all their work gets destroyed. You could hire any amount of workers and make them pay for the job. If it costs you triple, or fool them to finish the job. Kates and matin, sela kitzatitchem boyer tlushtayim. And finally, all this is discussing is if it's going to be very hard for you to find new workers, and you have to, or the price of workers went up and there's a shortage of workers. But if it's not such a big deal to find new workers, then fine, the workers could quit, and there's no financial repercussions for them quitting. Okay, we're going to stop over here by Tony Tanak Hamei Derav.
Thank you.
Thank you.